Good morning, everyone. So my name is Amanda Phipps. I'm the CVIS Systems Coordinator and Data Analyst at ISSS, International Student and Scholar Services. And I'm joined here today by my colleague, Madison McHale. She is an International Student and Scholar Advisor here at ISSS. And she was previously a visa coordinator in the chemistry department at Penn. So she brings a unique perspective and experience from your side. And she has a lot of great tips and tricks that she learned over her years as a visa coordinator that she's going to share with you all today.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Amanda.
All right, so this is a beginner level training. So we will go over the basics of how to use iPenn and then just some tips and tricks to make your lives a little bit easier and just to show you how some features work that you may not be aware of. We will take questions at the end. I request that you hold your questions to the end. If you have something that you think is only topical at the moment and you need to bring it up, that's fine. Just unmute and we can handle that at the time. Okay, so we're starting off with how-to iPenn edition. So this is how to use some of the features of iPenn. So first, it's just with how to access it. So for those of you who haven't already, there is a workday training that needs to be completed before you can gain access to iPenn. It must be completed, and once you pass the training, you will be prompted to submit an e-form and upload a document signed by the department chair to let us know what departments you require access to. Oh, sorry, just to address a question in the chat from Michelle. If we think we'll forget our question, can we submit it here for addressing later? Absolutely. Please feel free to submit questions as they come up. So for iPenn access, if you will require access to multiple departments, you can just handwrite them onto that form. I'd also recommend that you send an email to me as well, just to make sure that those additional departments are added under your purview. Similarly, if you already have access, but you require access to different or new departments, please just send me an email and I can add them. And this tutorial in Workday Learning is available for you to go back to. So if you need it as a resource, if you're someone who's not going to be utilizing iPenn often, it can be very helpful to go back to. Also, I want to say for our UPHS employees, I think you can still access this through Knowledge Link since you will not have access to Workday Learning. Okay, so once you have your access to be able to sign into iPenn, you need to make sure that you are clicking on this red option here for Penn administrators / department representatives. So that is the login that we use. That will be the login the department representatives use as well. The blue one for international students, scholars, and employees are for our current employees and students that have Penn keys. For our, let's say, new incoming J1 or H1Bs, before they are onboarded and have a Penn key, they would use this limited service login. If you or any of your employees or scholars in your department are having issues logging in, please feel free to reach out to me directly and we can help you with that. Okay, so something you will see in just about every e-form now that you create is you will have to state that you've completed visual compliance. And this is for export control, which is a set of federal laws and regulations designed to protect U.S. national security. So they govern how information, technologies, and commodities can be transmitted internationally or to foreign nationals within the U.S. So in order to do this and comply with this federal regulation, Penn utilizes a visual compliance to perform restricted party screening. So this is used to identify any potential prohibited or restricted parties. So this could be certain institutions, overseas, or if there are certain technologies or things that are on this export control list, it will need to go through this visual compliance. It's very important that this is done prior to initiating an application in IPenn. If it comes back with a hit and you are not able to get it cleared, then you won't be able to move forward with the application. So it's really important to do it up front. Also, this has to be done by the department. This cannot be done by a J1 scholar, by an H1B. It has to be done by the department because it's a conflict of interest if we have the employee doing this for themselves. The visual compliance training can be found at the link on the screen. I went through it because I was curious. It's actually a very good training, and it's something you can also refer back to if you need to, if you have questions. And then if you have questions with any of the actual visual compliance, access, or export control questions, please reach out to Jessica Buchanan, and she's the director of export compliance. She's incredibly helpful and responsive, and she knows way more about this than anyone at ISSS ever will. So please direct your questions to her to make sure you're getting the best answer. Okay, so once you are in IPenn, this is how to navigate your cases. So this is an example of what it looks like. If I was logged in as my supervisor, Melinda, she can see the IPenn overview, the 2 different departments she has access to, and then alerts and notifications. We ask that you use this departmental services option on the left-hand menu and not my current cases. So my current cases is something that's created by the vendor that we are not able to edit or remove, unfortunately, and it tends to have some bugs. So we prefer departmental services that is controlled by us, and it just makes everything a lot smoother. Okay, so once you are on your homepage, talking about how to navigate your department cases. So you can see cases that are assigned to other people within your department. As you can see here, there are 3 different department representatives listed under cardiovascular medicine. And all 3 of these people can see others' cases. This can be really helpful. Let's say if someone's on vacation, or even if someone leaves, you still have access and can edit and update that person's cases. The only downside is that the alerts and notifications are specific to the person assigned to that case. So let's say if I'm Colleen, I would not have the same notifications or alerts about verifications as Cheryl. So just keep that in mind. If someone from your department does leave or will be on an extended absence, please let us know who you would like to reshuffle their cases to, and we can do that for you. And we can always put them back. Like if the person is on maternity leave or something, we can reassign the cases once they return. But it is important that someone who is still in the department is assigned to that case so that you don't miss like the ending soon notifications that come up. That's really important. And then verification reminders as well. Okay, so this is understanding the different statuses that will show up on your case page and how cases move through these different statuses. Now, this does vary depending on the type of visa status. So I'm initially just going to talk about H-1B, and then Madison will clarify how it works for J-1s because they move through the stages a little bit different. So you'll see there's pending, incoming, and approved. Pending cases are for H-1Bs are ones once they are submitted to ISSS. So after a department creates the case, it is assigned to an advisor at ISSS, it will show up in pending and it will stay there until that H-1B employee's status is changed to active in IPenn. So they will stay there for quite a while. Incoming for H-1Bs, these are cases initiated by the department up until the time it is submitted to ISSS. So once you started a case, all through the time that you are working on it, gathering the documents, working with the employee to get them to complete their section, the H-1B will remain in this incoming status. And then cases are listed as approved once they are active in IPenn. So for H-1Bs, that is the case. And I will send it over to Madison to explain how it works for J-1s.
Good morning again, everyone. So for J's, going back to the top, the pending cases section, for J1s, they are going to be in that section or moved into that section from the time that you get the email that the application's been approved and the DS 2019 has been issued. They will be there starting at that time up until when the J1 arrives and then completes our check-in process. And then the next one for incoming, those are going to be cases that either you are still working on, haven't submitted yet to ISSS, or you have submitted, they just aren't approved yet and have moved to, the DS 2019 being issued. It's also normal to see in the incoming section as well as in the approved section, if you see, let's say you have a scholar that is already here and you're doing an extension, you may see their name show up twice in the incoming and the current. And that would happen if you were in the middle of a new application to extend them. That's why they're showing up in both areas. But really, if you click on either name, it's going to take you to the same place. But that's when you see them being captured twice. And then going to the last one, approved. That is after they have checked in, initial new scholars, when they have checked in, completed our check-in requirements. And then I believe too, when that email goes out saying the record was activated, that is when they get moved into the approved section. Okay. So this is referring to how to add a new case. And this is for, I know that I just talked about in the last slide about extensions. This is for when you're adding an entirely new case. We will get a little bit later into the other slides, if you do want to extend someone or change their status, if you have a J who's here and you want to change them to being here as an H-1B. But for now, this is if you're just adding an entirely new case. When you're in your iPenn overview after clicking on departmental services and then you're in this area, that is when, as you see where the big red arrow is, to click to add a new case. This won't pop up, this option, if, for example, you click on where it says ISSS testing, that typically is where your department is listed and hyperlinked. If you've clicked on that and you're looking at your detailed list of people in your department, you won't see up at the top on that page, click to add a new case. You'll need to be in the iPenn overview. And then to add a new case, and you'll see over to the right, we have an example of what that page looks like. We're going to ask you request type. That's either going to be J1 student intern, J1 scholar, short-term scholar, as well as H-1B. That's when we know kind of what application we're going to be generating for you. And then department, obviously, which one it is. And then we're going to ask for data on that incoming employee or scholar. So you want to make sure, and this is what I found to just be the best way to do this. I usually would ask for a scholar or employee to provide a scan of the first page, or I say first page or biographical data page of their passport. It just, especially for someone who has multiple names within their first name and last name, it's really important to see how it's divided up. So the passport is the most accurate way to do that. Or sometimes you have scholars, employees that may use a different given name. So you want to do is list on the passport. Middle name is not required, but date of birth, again, you want to make sure you're paying attention to the format. Pretty much all countries except the United States, I've seen, even with, I'm from Canada, my Canadian passport, they go day, month, year. So you just want to make sure that you are double checking that. If for some reason you are unsure, you can reach out to that prospective scholar employee, but really for the most part, just it is day, month, year. So you want to look out for that. And then the Penn ID number, if known. I know that a lot of the time, especially if it is a scholar, like a scholar postdoc hasn't arrived yet, they may not, for whatever onboarding process you're doing, they may most likely not have the Penn ID number yet. If by any chance you are bringing someone that just you happen to have, that would be awesome to input it, but it is normal, and I'm sure as many of you know, for onboarding purposes and hiring, that you really won't know, especially with scholars, until sometimes even when they've like actually gone to get their Penn card and then it's issued that way. So I'm just, if Amanda wants to add anything that she can, but that's the gist of it for the Penn IDs. Yeah, I saw the shaking head, so we're good.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah. Okay. So as I said before, getting into if you're wanting to update an existing record. So this last slide was for adding a brand new scholar. This is if you are wanting to extend a scholar, reappoint them, or even, like I said, if you have someone who's already here as a J1 scholar and your department is now wanting to sponsor them as an H1B. What you will do is you will, per usual, like go into your approved cases, you'll click on that person's name, and then it'll bring up this iPenn detailed view. It's not going to ever say any wording in terms of like extend. It's going to look, it may even, we actually had a VA we were working with this past week, and I know was asking about this because it looks odd when you're thinking like begin it again, even though they're already here. What's most important is that you're just clicking on the right designation. So if it is, someone who's already a J1 scholar and you're wanting to extend them, just making sure that you're clicking on begin J1 scholar request. And then same, if it's you're changing to H1B, begin H1B employee request. When you click on whichever button is most appropriate for your scenario, a warning button is going to alert is going to pop up saying something to the effect of, are you sure you want to do this? This is going to start new application, delete certain data. You just hit OK, because then on the next screen, once your forms auto populate and you're ready to start a new application, in Form 1, the first question is going to ask you what type of application this is. And then that's when you would be going in out of the drop down and clicking, an extension. And then we even have different subcategories of the type of extension, if there's funding changes, if there's not. But that is where you will get to tell us, is this an extension or whatever that is. So even though it says begin here, you will have the opportunity to tell us that you're not trying to start over with this person.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The language is a bit confusing.
Yeah. And I think it's good at least to, I know sometimes it feels redundant or annoying when that warning pops up, but I've even had as a BA, I remember there were times where it was a long day and I just accidentally clicked the H instead of the J button. And I am just reappointing a postdoc who's already a J. And then it's nice in those moments when that warning pops up, because then that's when I'm like, oh, no, I don't want them to be an H. And then I just click cancel and then click the right button. So that's also a silver lining to that warning popping up.
Okay, so we're going to talk about document uploads. This is something that can be a bit of a headache. There are certain requirements for documents. One of the main ones is just file size. So if a file is too large, if it's more than 3 megabytes, it's not going to upload properly. So you can either save it as a reduced size PDF. There is this compressor tool in Adobe Reader. You can also, print to PDF, I would say, is my go-to for when I need to upload things. If you are still having trouble, if you say, I have tried everything I cannot break this down into smaller parts, I just cannot make this file upload, please feel free to reach out to me. And I know I keep saying this and you're probably wondering how. At the end, I will have a slide that has all of our contact information on it. But if you have the correct file type, it's a PDF or a JPEG, make sure that the file name only has letters or numbers. If there's any special characters, it will result in an error. So just make sure to follow those steps. If you still have trouble, please reach out to me. I can typically figure out the issue or help you upload it to avoid the headache of having issues with that. Something else that can be tricky is there is a known vendor bug where if you upload documents and then save the form as a draft, then you may have trouble when you go to resubmit it. It may make you re-upload everything again. I'd strongly recommend for pages that require a bunch of uploads that you make sure you have all the documents first and that you're ready to submit when you do upload to avoid those issues. Okay, so we're moving on to how to with H-1B forms. We will go into this later. Madison will talk about J-1E forms. So for the H-1B E-form, this is actually an E-form group. So it's made up of 5 different E-forms. The first one is the department request form. This is even if the employee already works at Penn, and for an H-1B, say they're here in J-1 status and you're initiating an H-1B, make sure that you choose that this will be a new application because it will be new as far as H-1B is concerned. The department request form is where we will obtain information related to the position that is being offered to this employee, the location, which is very important, especially now with Penn offering hybrid opportunities. Make sure to include the employee's home address if they will be working hybrid, or if there's multiple locations they will be working. All of that is very important to the H-1B, and we need to have that information up front. Otherwise, we may have to redo aspects of the application, and it can slow things down. So please be careful with that. For the H-1B employee data form, this is where we come into an issue with uploads. So that form on the employee's side has a ton of uploaded documents. They really, because they cannot save it as a draft, they should make sure they have gathered all of those documents ahead of time and have them ready to go to avoid having to redo it. I know, Madison, if you have any tips on that, as far as a list of what documents they're going to be asked for. I know some department representatives will have that to provide to their employee just to make things a little bit easier.
Yeah, it sometimes too, because I know sometimes it even can be dependent on how they answer certain questions. I know sometimes it's even, I find just telling an employee who's inquiring about it, sometimes just to go through the form, start just as if you're answering the question, just kind of do a run through, because I know our forms a lot of the time will have, based on how you answer a prompt, will expand after that. So it's almost, I say it's like a run through, just go through, kind of just start answering some questions. But more, because I know there's some where they're like open-ended. They necessarily don't have to do the open-ended. I know more just the multiple choice, kind of where you're clicking on an answer, just see what comes up. That could be a good indicator. And then again, when they're, as Amanda said, when they're going back into the form, I usually just tell them, just try to find a time where you know that when you start it and when you're going to start uploading documents, that you have the time to be able to do that in one sitting. So those are my tips for that.
Yes, very good tips. Another thing that comes up often with the employee data form is that sometimes the employees will have login issues. So for this eForm 2, you as the department will put in the person's email address and name, and then they receive an email to go in and fill out this form. Once they follow the instructions on the email that they receive, it takes them to a login page with pre-filled information. So if they leave it as is, they should be fine. The issue comes in where if they try to change the login credentials, or if they have passwords or logins stored in their browser and it's replacing the pre-filled information, that's where we come into a problem. So I would normally recommend that if they have that pre-filled information, either turn that off or use an incognito browser. Personally, whenever I have to test things, I always use an incognito browser because it logs me in as me or as a test account that I have. So it's something that's very useful. Of course, if they have issues and you don't know how to solve them, please feel free to direct them to me. And I'm always happy to do that as well. Okay, so for e-forms 1 through 3, they are editable up until the time you submit e-forms 4 and 5. So e-form 3, well, I didn't discuss it. That's where you'll put the called the LCA information. So it's information about similarly situated employees. So say you have 10 postdocs in your department, you would need to put their salary, their years of experience. If there's any difference, like say there's people who have the same amount of experience as the person you're offering this job to as an H-1B, but this person's making more money than you're offering the H-1B, you need to have some justification for that. So that is what will get put into e-form 3. E-form 4, you will put your department funding information to pay the internal fee. You will also be prompted to click on these printable materials, or signature documents is how we often refer to them. It actually will pull information from e-forms 1 and 3, and then you will need to get the documents signed and then upload those into e-form 5. And the application itself isn't considered submitted until all of the e-forms are in. So e-form 4 and e-form 5. Once those are submitted, then you have done your part and you're just waiting for it to be assigned on the ISSS side. Okay, so this is an important one, how to save case information. And now this is slightly different for H and for J. So Madison will talk about it from the J1 side in a little bit. So we recommend that after you submit e-form 4, but before you submit e-form 5, so before the entire e-form group is submitted, to click on this view/save/print e-form group button. This will generate a PDF of each e-form within the e-form group. So you'll see the question and the answers that you or the employee provided. You will also be able to see all of the supplementary documents uploaded by the employee in e-form 2. So this is great for you to just save for your records. It's helpful later if you're doing an extension or an amendment, or even just so that you have all the information. We know you have a ton of work to do. You have a lot of cases. You also this may be a tiny part of your job and you have a lot of other responsibilities. Being able to refer back to this can just make it easier in your interactions with ISSS as the H-1B case is processed, and even with the employee. So it's just good for you to have. Once you submit e-form 5, it's no longer available. So please make sure to get that at that time. If you have submitted it and you realize you didn't make a copy, I can still get you a copy. It just won't look as nice as this one. So please, if you remember, try to do this. Now, this is different than from if you click on like the specific person, you'll see their case page with Madison discussed before, where you can either continue an application or start a new one. You'll see this button at the bottom that says view/print most recent. For H-1B, that will actually bring up the signature documents. So can be helpful, but it's not the same as this view/save/print e-form group. Okay, handing it over to Madison for checks.
So as most of you already know, but also if anyone has yet to process an H-1B in IPenn, part of the H-1B application process in general does involve requesting will call checks that will be addressed to Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, and that's a vendor in Penn Marketplace. The nice thing in terms of, I know the first is when can you request checks? I know now, which I think is awesome, that the checks do not expire anymore. I know before, back in the day, a couple years, I think even as of a year or 2 years ago, they only were valid for, I think, up to 90 days. Now they do not have an expiration. So the upside with that is you can request those checks as early as after you've submitted e-form 5. You also will be reminded again when your assigned advisor will at some point in the process send you an automated email letting you know when we are at the notice of filing stage of the application. But regardless of when you do decide to request the checks, I would recommend with your assigned advisor just keeping them in the loop when you have requested the checks, or even when your department tells you, or like, hey, looks like they've been cut by accounts payable. It's good because then also they can be on the lookout for it, like when those checks do arrive. Because we are still doing, I think still every Tuesday, we are doing a batch pickup of any checks that for Homeland Security that have been printed by AP that previous week. As I said before, Penn Marketplace, those will call check requests are submitted as non-PO requests in Penn Marketplace. And I know in the non-PO request process, I think it's the second to last window before you officially submit. I feel like it's so tiny. It just says, mark as will call request, and it's easy to miss. You just want to make sure that that is checked off, because if not, what's going to happen is AP is going to cut the check. They then aren't going to think twice about it, even though they know that it's Homeland Security and they never get shipped out. If it's not marked as will call, it automatically gets mailed out. And that is not good, because I can guarantee that when it arrives in Homeland Security, they will not know what that check is for. So you don't want to do that. Another thing is for non-PO requests, each check that you need to request is going to be its own non-PO request. You cannot combine them. And it's going to be a little bit different for each. I know usually it can be up to 3 different checks. Minimum, if it's in a new application, it will be 2. If you do decide that you want to do premium processing, that's where you will see where there's 3 checks. But however many checks that you need for your specific application, it has to be separate requests for each. If you are not the person who typically has the Penn Marketplace access or and submits those non-POs directly, or in general, if you are just not sure, you haven't done this yet, and you're not sure if you are the person to do this, I do recommend trying to connect with your department's business office or whoever in the department would typically be handling POs and non-POs in Penn Marketplace. If it is somebody else who is doing this on your behalf, you're going to want to just connect with them and make sure that they are following. I know that when you do submit, I missed this part, sorry. So when you do submit for Form 4, or you're about to, and you get those printable documents that you need to sign and submit into e-form 5, there is a handout that comes with those printable documents. And it is a handout of how to, like, tips and tricks for how to properly request the checks. I think as well, it also is an attachment that goes along with the email notification, as I said before, when we're letting you know we're at the notice of filing stage. So there's 2 opportunities where you get that handout. If somebody else in your department requests those checks, I recommend that you're informing them of those tips that we recommend, because those tips really are important in terms, for example, I know in the non-PO, there is an area where you do a description of what the check is. There's 2 different areas. I know right at the very beginning, there is a box that explain what this is for. And then later on that page towards the bottom, there's another area where you also are putting that in. It's that box towards the end. That is what we're looking for. It's really important in that box that you are putting the first and last name of that employee. Because that is what gets printed onto the check. Now, we've been noticing And I can understand if this is the wording, how to, especially if your department needs to have more of an identifier of what this check is for. We've seen, for example, if people are putting, you guys are doing great with putting the first and last names of the employee, but we're seeing something like, for example, it will say like H1B for this person or premium processing for this person. Even though in the non-PO, there is a pretty like generous character limit, it's even stricter on what actually gets printed onto the check. And more often than not, it gets cut off. So we do get quite a bit of checks that just say H1B4 and the name gets cut off. So we do ask, if I can understand if you still need to have that identifying information of what the check is for, but maybe reversing how you put it. So for example, putting, the person's first and last name and then a hyphen like H1B application. I think however you choose to do it, it's really important that that name, no matter what you're putting, the first and last name comes first. We don't really need any other identifying information because when those checks come, as I said before, when you can let your assigned advisor know and they're going to be on the lookout for it, they go and they are actually the ones looking for the check. They are trying to find that name on the checks. That's how they find them and make sure that no checks are missing. So again, you guys are doing great adding the name. It's just we're noticing they're getting cut off. So just kind of reversing how you put it, I think would be really helpful. Okay, so next thing is how to update an existing H-1B case that's been already approved. It's a current employee here, but you're just wanting to let us know that the appointment just has ended. If the employee just leaves, and they no longer require the H-1B status. For example, they receive a different status, such as like permanent residency or green card. We will want to be notified of that. And the way to do that is, again, when you're in your overview of cases that you have, you're going to click on that person's name. It's going to bring up, once again, that iPenn detailed view that we've talked about repeatedly already. And you're going to see a button that says end of employment. You're going to click on that. And then what will pop up, it will ask, something of when is the last day this person will be an employee at Penn. I believe too, and Amanda can correct me if I'm wrong, there's like a drop down of reasons as to why they are leaving. If, for example, it is like they are changing their status to permanent residency or something else, depending on how you answer and click in that drop down, a prompt will pop up that is specific to that answer. So with that, for when it's PR, then it's saying, okay, can you please upload a copy of the green card? Or if it is someone that is just, they found a new job opportunity, or they've just decided they want to end their employment early and go back to their home country sooner, then the prompt is going to be, okay, can you please upload, a letter of resignation? So what I used to do, if I was unsure based on the reason that someone was going to end employment, similar as I said before, how employees can kind of in their data form go in and kind of preemptively just kind of fill out the form and see what's required. I used to just go into end of employment, click my option of the reason why, see what the prompt was, what I needed, and then I would go to the department, if applicable, or the employee and just ask for what the end of employment's asking for. I found that was the easiest because you can't remember every single option. Okay.
All right, so we have 2 more slides on H-1B and then we'll move on to J1.
Yes.
So a common pain point, I think, from the department side and the ISSS side are H-1B position descriptions. So I just want to let you know what this is used for. So this is the information on the ISSS side that advisors use to choose the occupational code. It's also the only information that a USCIS representative will have when they are making a decision if this is indeed a specialty occupation. So specialty occupation means it requires at least a bachelor's degree in a specific field. So if we're only given one sentence, or if it's a paragraph, but it doesn't have much substance to it, It makes it very difficult on the ISSS side to choose a SOC code. It also could even lead to a request for evidence from USCIS, which opens a whole can of worms and makes a ton of work for everyone. So we try to get the information that we need from the position description to avoid problems and delays moving forward. So something to keep in mind is that the position description should be written for a lay audience. So whether it's ISSS or USCIS, we're not experts in all fields. So if I'm not familiar with bioengineering, try not to use words that someone who is not in that field would have no idea what they mean. You want to make it so it sounds like a specialty occupation, but also it has to be written in a way that a person not familiar with that field could understand it. So we advise to use certain like action words to help describe what it is the person will be doing. So normally these positions will start with under the supervision of, and we ask not to use the name of the person as that is subject to change, but say, for example, under the supervision of the principal investigator, whoever it is that's going to be this person's supervisor, you can list their title. And then say, we have performing studies too, assisting, maintaining, overseeing, developing, participating. The participating is typically like in meetings and presentation, things related to the work of the department. Another important thing is additional duties as assigned. This is a little bit of a catch-all so that you can say if there are certain things that aren't outlined exactly in the position description, but they still fall under the purview of that type of position, that this person could be doing additional things as well. We typically request around 3 to 5 active sentences describing the daily duties and responsibilities. And a good place to find this information would be the workday position description. There should be things in there about what it is the person will be doing and the requirements for the position. So for this next slide, here's an example, and I will also ask Madison to give us some tips on how to obtain this information, because I think that could be difficult from the department side. So quickly, I just want to point out a couple things on here. So minimum education, it has to be at least bachelor's. If the position does not require a bachelor's degree, they're not eligible to be an H-1B. Then we also get into the major field of study. It has to be at least one major. I'd recommend not more than 3, because that can really change make it not really specialty if a bunch of different majors could do it. For the number of employees individual will supervise, that is other staff members. And it has to be responsible for hiring, firing, like the person that does your performance review. If you are just overseeing students in a lab, that doesn't count. I will hand it over to Madison for tips on how to get this information.
So for example, I dealt with a lot more often than not. It was if a postdoc or a researcher type position was transitioning to an H-1B, to where, or really any position where like the workday is not really the best option to go with, and you may just be going off of, in the offer letter, the like 1 to 2 sentence description of what the PI has provided in terms of what that employee or position entails. And I know especially with the offer letters, or at least I remember in SAS, they weren't really asking for it to be written in a lay audience. It was just kind of whatever the PI gave you just were adding to the letter. I think it would be helpful. I know in the past, if I've had a 1 to 2 sentence to work off of, then if I'm able to, I'm then reaching out to the PI and just saying, hey, this is what we used on the offer letter. We are working on an H-1B, but we are needing to put this sentence in, more to a lay audience. Do you think you can elaborate a bit on this? Add a couple more sentences and just see what they bring back to you. Or if you already have something that's 3 to 5 sentences, but you are seeing some terms in there that, like, for example, I have one up right now where I had a PI saying that the postdoc position would be, conducting research using 2D EV. And that was it. And so I said, can you elaborate a bit on that? If it has, if it's an acronym for something, can you spell that out for us? And he ended up saying, it 2DEV as in, a vibrational spectrometer. Like he had kind of done an IE and kind of elaborated a bit, but it's not where, every single thing has to be defined. I think just more if there is a term that is just not familiar at all, whether it has a little brief parentheses description or just breaking it down a little bit, because you have to think about, as Amanda mentioned, that is what the USCIS field officer is looking at, who's processing the case. And you just have to assume whoever is processing it, there's a very good chance, especially if it's chemistry, for example, they have no chemistry background. They just need to have a general understanding of what is going on with the position. And yeah, so like I said, that's a good place at least to start, especially for positions that don't have the traditional workday and you don't have a lot to go off of. You can at least work with what you've got so far, and go from there.
All right, so now we'll get into J1 things. It is 11:50.
Yeah.
Time's flying here.
Yeah.
So we'll go through the J1 stuff. We will stay on for questions regardless of what time it is, but just to be mindful of time.
Okay. So for J's, a little bit similar to the H, but instead of 5 e-forms, because with the J's, you don't have like a printable document option you got to deal with at the end and upload. There are 4 e-forms. E-forms 1, 3, and 4, they are something that the department rep or BA is going to be filling out. E-form 2 is what is the responsibility of the scholar. You have a role to play in E-form 2 in terms of you will be sending it to them, as in you will click on that e-form, you'll be putting in their name and email address and submitting that. So then the e-form itself can be sent to them, but they are the ones ultimately filling it out. The final budget related e-form, that's only available after all the previous e-forms are submitted. So 1 to 3, and that includes that after you've sent off e-form 2, that then that incoming or current scholar has not only filled it out, but they've submitted it again. That means that that form is done. Let me see, e-form 2. So as I said, for e-form 2, that gets sent to the scholar. The J1 scholar, if they do have a dependent, they will need to complete a separate J2 dependent e-form request. There should be instructions in there on that, but they will be asked, are they expect to bring a family member? Then, as I said before, with prompts based on how they answer yes or no, they answer yes, then they are going to be prompted to provide additional information. If there is a login issue, as Amanda said before, it's the same with the H-1B employee data form. It usually stems from them trying to use a Penn key or just not using the credentials that were provided in that email. So they really just need to follow the instructions in that email. And again, credentials are provided for that. I think too, let me see for the next one. Okay, yeah. So for the first e-form, it's going to ask, one of the questions is going to ask what you're seeing here. Have both the scholar and home institution been screened through visual compliance? This is where that, as we said at the beginning of the presentation, that export control training that you need to go through, this is where it comes into play. So you will click on this URL. I do recommend that you right click and do open in a new tab. Because that if you don't, it'll bring it up on this existing screen. It's tough to go back to the application. So you want to open in a new tab. If you've already completed it, you will just click yes. If you haven't, go ahead, go through the process of visual compliance. And then once you have, you click yes. If there was a match, you will click yes, but I do know in the training, it does say if a match does come up that you do want to go ahead and contact Jessie Buchanan. She has her own protocol of how to go about doing that. But if there was no match, you just click no, and then you enter the date of when the screening occurred. And you're going to do this every time, even with a reappointment. You can't rely on just the first time around. I've even had scholars that for the first 2 years they were here, every year I've done it, there has not been a match, but then like third reappointment, a match does pop up. So it does need to be done every time. Okay. So again, as Amanda had mentioned before with H's, after you submit eForm 4, again, strongly recommend saving a copy of it. So again, we're showing here too, it is going to the top in the Save Print eForm group. The difference with H1B, as Amanda had said before, that if you click on one, you get a certain view, but if you click on the other, you'll only see the printable documents. Here, you're going to see the same, regardless of what you click on, it's going to be a preview of like the whole application. It's just they're two different ways of seeing it. So what I would recommend is if you don't know that, or if you haven't clicked on both before, you don't know the differences between the two, right after you've submitted an application, just click on both options, look at them both. It really is based on preference, how the view that you like to see. I know that I personally preferred clicking on the iPenn detailed view, the view print most recent J1 Scholar requests. Some people prefer the other. So it really is your preference, but both will bring up a version of your entire application, including what the J had submitted in their data form. So for J's, end of employment is done a little bit differently as it is for H's. There isn't going to be a button in their detail view that says end employment. What you're going to do is you're going to click on that scholar's name, and in the iPenn detail view, you're instead going to go to the top right corner and you're going to click edit. When you go to edit, you're going to see that the end date is something that you can edit. You're going to go ahead and that's where you're going to change and put when the last day that scholar is going to be here at Penn, if it's sooner than or much earlier than the current end date. When you do that, and then at the bottom it says submit, it will turn it red, and then it'll say something to the effect of, okay, this change is currently being reviewed by ISSS. That is how you do that, and then you will be emailed, or if there's any questions or even just further steps, you will be contacted soon after. But that is how you go ahead and request that J1 be ended early.
Yes, and if you put in a date that is earlier than the current end date, but you get a notification that says this cannot be used for extensions, please just email us with the end date. There is a vendor bug where depending on what the date is, it's confusing like month and day, and it's considering it an extension. It is something we're currently working on, but it's still a bug. So just let us know if that happens.
So for the eForms, I think a great tip and time-saving tip is that the eForms do not have to be submitted in order. The only one, though, that is an exception to that is, as I said, that final form eForm 4. You just can't upload, like you can't start working on that. What you can do, though, in that form, which is nice, is one of the required documents of eForm 4 is that department confirmation letter. You can actually, there's a hyperlink for it. If you have, especially Form 3 already filled in and submitted, you can actually click on that. If you're waiting on the scholar to submit, you can click on that form. You can actually fill out that PDF, get that started. So that is the only thing really that you can do in iPenn Form 4. But the rest, again, it does come in handy, especially if for some reason each case is different. If you're waiting on the department to get you an approval, or even you're waiting on the scholar to fill out eForm 2, it can help in terms of saving some time. Personal funding, if you have a scholar that is coming in on personal funding is a type of funding that the scholar will have to upload themselves the documentation in Form 2. What I recommend is, especially so you can have a bit more control as to what the scholar is actually submitting, so you don't have to see their submission, realize what they put is not correct, and then have to redo it, is I usually would ask the scholar to send me a copy of their funding proof. Especially I've gotten ones where like they send me a bank statement and it's like the whole like 20 pages of the entire bank statement, but really I just need to see that first page. So you can make edits such as that, like consolidating, as well as if it's not in US funds, you will need to add a conversion. xe.com should be the conversion that you use. You'll just go in, put in the appropriate currency, funding. Once it's converted, you just save to PDF that printout of it, and you just add it on to the funding. And then what I would typically do, add it, and then as a combined PDF, just send it back to the scholar and say, okay, you're about to fill out your data form. Make sure at the personal funding section, this is the PDF that you are using to upload to the form. Okay. So, and Amanda can correct me if I'm wrong. I know this is more going to apply for H's because luckily, thank the Lord, DS 2019s now can be sent electronically. We do not have to print them out and make you or the scholar come pick them up or ship them out, which is wonderful. But for H's, unfortunately, that is still something we're doing through paper. So we have a pickup appointment system. You will be emailed that when you do get your H-1B, the like automate that it's been approved. We have very detailed instructions there in terms of not only setting up a pickup appointment, if you or the employee want to do that, or even just document shipping. All of that is listed there. But just an overview again, we have a link here that allows you to schedule a pickup appointment. You must have Penn key credentials to log in and request that. Our pickup hours are 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. as well as 1:30 to 3. All the appointment slots will be within there, and I think they're like 10-minute like increments. So there's a ton of options in terms of appointment pickup times. And then again, for, as I said before, requesting document shipping, as you see over to the right, that example in the iPenn detailed view again, one of the buttons you will see request document shipping. When you click on that, you are going to need to upload a PDF of the shipping label when you are filling that out. So it's up to you how you obtain that. If it's something that if you do that through Penn eShip, if the department is providing, or if the scholar employee is wanting to provide that themselves, whichever it is, whichever shipping label needs to be used for this, that's what we're going to ask you to upload. It must be 8.5 by 11, and department must be the sender. And then I know that's for department. And then scholar, as I said before, they can request and pay to have their documents shipped to them as well. But again, that is what we need. And then you will, once it is shipped out or is going to be picked up that day and we've processed it, you will get an automated email from ISSS saying that it's going out that day or has already gone out that day. Okay, I'll be quick with verifications. These verifications are really important for us just to make sure on our end, especially if we need to make any changes on our end with H-1B, but even if it's updates to a scholar's DS 2019 that warrants that. These verifications do come to you, I think it's still every 6 months. I know the first one that you can expect to get is when you have a new scholar or employee that's checked in and done our check-in requirements. Usually when then they are moved from, as we said before, the pending to your active list, pretty shortly after, within a day or so, a verification notice will pop up for them that that's the first time you need to do it. If there are no changes to that person at that time that you're filling out the due verification, it is like a checkbox system. So you just check everything off. All the information that we have currently for that person will be there. So you check it off. Everything looks good. I know for J's, if you do see that like the salary has changed, what you will do is you will go up to the top and you will click edit of that iPenn detail view, you'll go in, you'll make those changes, even if it's a salary change, and then you go back into the verification and fill that out. But I think at the top, it does give those instructions if you need to make any changes. If the salary does go over 5%, you will be required to provide like an open-ended answer as to why that is happening. And then if it's justified, that's fine. If we do have a follow-up or have questions regarding the reasoning for that increase, then we will reach out to you. But anything less than 5% is not necessary to justify.
All right. Thank you, Madison. And thank you, everyone. We want to get into a question section while we take questions. So here is how to get in touch with us. So Madison is an advisor. So if she is assigned to any cases, you can reach out to her directly. For anything IPenn related, please reach out to myself or my supervisor, Melinda Ponce. And if it's a question that we can't answer that Madison may know, we will reach out to her as the former department representative. But in general, please feel free to reach out to us directly. That's the fastest way to get in contact with someone. I want to open it up to questions. I have a question for everyone, but I want to wait and see if anyone has questions. I did see one about if you are a CHOP employee, how do you access the visual compliance process? And that is a great question. I think you should still be able to. I'd recommend trying it. And if it doesn't work, I would reach out to export control directly just to see if they have a separate way for you to access it. If anyone else has questions, you can unmute and talk or put it in the chat, whichever you prefer.
Hi, I have I guess less of a question, more of something I noticed when I was going through this that I thought might be helpful.
Sure.
I'm doing an H-1B visa and I had trouble downloading the files for the fourth step. And I was using Google Chrome. So when I switched to Firefox, it was fine, but that might just be something helpful for others if you're experiencing the same.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I know the only reason I ever use Firefox is because of iPenn, but iPenn prefers Firefox. So if you are having issues and you're not using Firefox, try it there because it could work. You also could check with me if you're not sure if it's a you problem or a system problem. Happy to help as well. But yes, that's a very good plug for Firefox.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm also doing an H-1B, an extension. And this person has already applied for a green card, but there's a backlog. So I was told by Donna I can still apply for an extension. The issue I'm having now is that she has been an H-1B prior to Workday. And so there's no actual PIQ in Workday prior to 2019. And so I didn't know what I can actually upload into that step. Because I know it used to be the HR one too, but.
Yes, now you can, and Madison, please feel free to jump in because I don't know exactly what it looks like on the Workday side, but there's actually some information from Workday you can upload.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, I'm trying to think. I know it's, if you talk if you're not the HR representative, like talking to HR, just if there's wherever they would find like position information about that employee or the position itself, because it lives somewhere in Workday. Worst case too, I mean, if you are given something from HR, just kind of what they have. I know even too in the printable documents, when you get to Form 4 and then you see the printable, I know that there are some steps there as to how specifically get to a certain section of Workday. You could even provide those to whoever is going to be looking at that for you and saying, hey, this is what they usually provide. If that's not available, can we provide something similar? And then, you can always make a note of that, or if it's not assigned yet, or when it is assigned to that advisor, maybe showing what you were able to provide and just go from there. But that would be my advice for now. Yeah, I know workday is tough,
Okay,
especially
all
when
right.
yeah,
Thank you.
workday
Yeah,
is fun.
so do your best, and
Yeah.
we'll reach out if we need more.
Yeah, because we can understand too. It's even you can only so much see on your side, especially if you're someone pre-workday. Yeah, so we are definitely willing to work with you on that.
All right, please feel free if you have any more questions. I just want to ask a question, see if anyone here has any feedback. So we are looking to, as best we can, try to revamp our verification process a little bit, because we notice a lot of people do not fill them out. And I wanted to get some feedback to understand the reasoning for that. So is it, do we send them too often? Is this information that you don't know how to obtain or you don't have access to? Or are you just too busy and you don't, it's not a priority? Are there IPenn technical issues that keep you from submitting it? Like, if there's any kind of feedback you have about verifications would be helpful. We don't want to kind of reinvent the wheel without actually addressing any of the issues that you may have. And I won't be offended. So if it is IPenn, that's fine. You can tell me.
Yeah. I even had my own, like, don't feel like you're the only one. This is a thing. I know even when I first came to ISSS, I was like, oh, don't look at how many e-forms that or verifications. It happens. So yeah.
Yes, I believe this will be available. I will check with our marketing person after to be sure, but I believe we will be able to share this.
I don't know if you saw in the chat, Amanda, feedback.
Okay, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and if anyone, let's say if you have feedback or you talk to someone else and they have feedback and you don't want to bring it up in a presentation, I understand. Please email me and let me know. I may be reaching out to people to try to just get some feedback as to how people feel about them. Yeah, but while we're here, if anyone else has any questions, last call for questions. Okay, well, thank you so much to everyone for attending this presentation and for bearing with us. It was a lot. Please, if you can, fill out this this little Qualtrics thing to let us know how we did. And I do see some questions. Yes, Michelle, I believe we will send out the recording and the slides. I'm not sure if it's together or separate, but we will make sure to send it out to you. And again, anything that comes up, whether it's now or later, and you have questions, comments, concerns, please, we don't necessarily know if something isn't working, whether it's like technically isn't working or just process-wise isn't working unless you tell us. So please, you will not hurt my feelings. Let me know if anything comes up and you have ideas for it to be improved. We will take them.
It truly is, like, knowledge is power for us. Like, we really do want to make this as smooth of a process. And that's even why verification, like asking for feedback, like no matter how small all of it is helpful.
All right, well, we will end there. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.